What's up, everybody? Paul here from the Hoops Crew. You've caught me midway through my preparation for the Hoopies here. I'm all in my fancy shirts and those sort of things because we're about to have our fancy best and fairest. But breaking news can pop up at any time, and the Hoopies can absolutely be interrupted to talk all about Clayton Oliver. And so the talk is that Clayton Oliver is once again a potential acquisition target for the Cats. Now, some would recall potentially that I put together a video a while back about Christian Petrarca. Now, he wasn't being linked to the Cats. And honestly, the only reason I put together the video at the time was because based on some networks I have, there was a fear from people representing other clubs that Geelong might get involved. And if that was the case, then it would make their job a lot harder. Now, that didn't eventuate. But as a part of that conversation, I discussed the various players that were kind of being linked to the Cats at the time, from Clayton Oliver to Bailey Smith to Jack Macrae. Now, Macrae is out and seems likely to go to St Kilda. Petrarca, completely off the table. Bailey Smith, he's the front runner for the Cats, but of course at this point hasn't actually nominated the club. Clayton Oliver has now popped up on the table as a genuine possibility based on some reporting that's going around. So, Cal Toomey was talking about it via AFL media that he's, I guess, a little bit unhappy. He's feeling undervalued and dissatisfied with his time at Melbourne currently. He felt it throughout this season and especially in the last few weeks. And so it's kind of led to, the possibility of him leaving the club, and the Cats have come knocking. Understandably so. He's a gun midfielder. And of course, the midfield, despite many improvements and obviously a lot of stats that suggested towards the end of last year that actually it was becoming a real strength for us, adding someone like Clayton Oliver takes our team from a competitive midfield to an elite midfield that needs to be feared once again. He would be a massive, massive boon for us. And so he signed up to the end of 2030. Now, let's keep in mind that would mean that he's going to be 33 years old at this particular point. But before we get into the consequences, what it would mean for him to come across, how does it even happen, we're going to take a word, as always, from our sponsor.
The Hoops Crew Media Network is proudly sponsored by Cyril Cook Florist, established in Geelong since 1915. Visit their website at www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au. That's Cook with an E. Give them a call on 035 222 2244 or mention the Hoops Crew to get yourself 20% off your next in-store purchase when you visit them at Shop 12, 11 Leather Street in Breakwater.
So there's some texture to this whole scenario that we want to pick through. And thankfully, this is all broken on day one of Trade Radio. So we've got lots of experts out there making their thoughts known. And so you can see we've got some comments here from Josh Jenkins, former Cat, and Damien Barrett. We're going to talk about what Kane Corns and Sam McClure have had to say, and with different levels of information backing their opinions. But the first thing, and I guess the thing that's maybe more relevant to Cats fans, if he were to join the Cats, is what Josh Jenkins talks about, how it's a big decision because you're going after him with 6 years left. So it's going to take him to 2030. You got $5.5 million that you're still owing him. And as a result, you do want to feel pretty confident you're going to get him back to his best. Now, I did talk about before that I'm of the belief that Clayton Oliver had a poorer year due to the circumstances, due to the poor fitness base that he went into the season with, and that was off the back of all the dramas he had. I don't think the dramas have then led to this dramatic fall off in his game. I just think that he labored through the season a little bit. And so because he didn't have the preparation that was required, he had to get himself in order before he then focused on his preparation for football. And because the getting himself right took, I guess, potentially longer than maybe everyone expected, or at least a significant enough time that his preseason wasn't there and he was constantly having to try and build through the season. And that's a very hard thing for a player to do, no matter how good they are. We've got Damien Barrett talking about how he could see why Melbourne would be keen to get him off the books. Imagine you're going to be going to engage in this conversation. You want to expect that Melbourne would pay some of it. And of course, that is a big factor, especially if Geelong ends up being the team. $5.5 million over 6 years is a lot. If Melbourne are keen to get him off the books, the expectation might be from the Cats that they do stump up some of the bill. We're going to feel in the next 2.5 to 3 weeks, of course, because that's the trade and free agency period, as to how much Melbourne Football Club wants or doesn't want to have Clayton Oliver a part of it. The fact that trade rumours are out there again, clearly the clubs are the first to know when the possibility is in play. Let's kick across to the Sam McClure component of it. And then obviously there's some thoughts from a range of different people here. And it does kind of link to, I guess, what I'll start to talk about in a moment of the deal itself and how it may or may not even happen. So there'd been a report from Sam McClure in The Age and on 3AW, and that's where he was talking about how he was feeling a bit disillusioned, disconnected, and he'd felt that way throughout the entire season, but then that really has come to the fore again in the last few weeks, probably since the season has ended. He's feeling a little bit isolated and disconnected from the group. And I'd imagine some of the Christian Petrarca stuff, the conversation there, has probably not helped that, I think, a little bit as a result. The club's steeliness to keep Petrarca has then maybe led to Clayton Oliver feeling a little bit, well, where were you for me when I was having my problems? But again, his average salary, $1 million, Crane Corn says, if I was Melbourne, I would move heaven and earth to get rid of that $6 million off my books. In fact, I said throughout the year, I'd give a draft pick if you're prepared to take that contract off Melbourne's hands. That's how much I'd be prepared to get rid of Clayton Oliver out of my football club, so you don't have to deal with it being the off-field issues again, and you free up salary cap room. Geelong, they've been linked to another player in Bailey Smith, so I'm not sure how they get it done. And as the article kind of highlights there, Clayton Oliver will be 33 by the end of this contract. He's 27 right now. The contract will take him to 2030. There are a range of different combinations and permutations here, different scenarios that could result in Clayton Oliver becoming a cat. And there's obviously the more traditional one, which is there's some sort of trade and maybe because the AFL has allowed clubs to pay portions of salaries and there's a financial component to the transactions these days, maybe there is that initial idea that Josh Jenkins was talking about where Geelong takes on the man himself and obviously a large portion of his pay packet, but maybe Melbourne is paying, I don't know, a quarter, if I just throw out a number. I don't know, maybe out of $5.5 million, maybe Melbourne's paying for 1.5, Geelong takes on the 4 million. That's then spread over those 6 remaining years. Who knows? I'm not, there's many different ways that could be split up. And of course, the other thing is that you could have front-loaded contracts, back-ended contracts. It could be very evenly, symmetrically distributed. Who knows? The other thing is what Kane Corns was talking about here, which is the draft pick thing. And as Cats fans, we've seen this before with Jack Bowes when the Gold Coast Suns were looking to try and get him out. They were offering the lure of draft picks as well. And this could be where, if you're Geelong, you might think a little bit about, maybe we will take on the full heft of his pay packet here. We'll take on the full $5.5 to $6 million that is owing. But we also get a young up and coming gun potentially in the draft for Melbourne's first pick or something like that. That is a far more appealing option as well. If we were to just discuss those two, that would be my personal preference. And I also think that in terms of trading, the actual transaction that needs to occur between the clubs, I think it's an easier one to kind of manage, I guess. The trick for Geelong right now is that they are committed to Bailey Smith as well, seemingly. And again, we don't have that confirmation yet, but they are seemingly committed to him as well as potentially now Clayton Oliver. And I don't know how we get the deal done. And this is where my worries about, and my kind of very definitive comments that people have seen in video recently about Sam de Koning, I start to get a bit wobbly here. I still believe Sam de Koning will remain a cat. But I am a bit more anxious about it because he has a lot of value. And you could see a Melbourne Football Club or a Western Bulldogs putting someone of Sam de Koning's capabilities to very, very good use. And I see him as potentially being a factor because we don't have a lot of draft capital. As things stand right now, and I need to bring up a message from Ben, who fortunately recently sent me the selection of picks that we had just kind of randomly. We've got, as things stand right now, we've got pick 15, 35, 53, and 71. And then, of course, there's futures and those sorts of things that are part of that as well. At the moment, keep in mind, you can only trade futures for next year, but beginning next year, you can then trade multiple years worth of futures if you like. That is a change coming into the system next year. So pick 15 is going to be, I think, a pretty key piece of the puzzle when it comes to getting Bailey Smith. So then that doesn't leave you much to work with when it comes to Clayton Oliver as well. You feel like to make this happen, Geelong is going to need to, at the very least, offload their first from this year and their first from next year. There's probably going to need to be some extra stuff on top of it. Maybe they're going to have to forfeit the second round pick from both years as well. And that with maybe something coming back the other way, some Geelong doing a Geelong, in the same way that they transacted over Asava Ratugolea, maybe there's some kind of cheaper picks coming back the other way, just to ensure that we can make enough selections. We've created obviously a lot of gaps on our list recently with the retirements and delistings that we've already gone through. Maybe there's a few kind of lower level picks coming back the other way and we kind of step away from what is sounding like it's going to be an amazing draft. But then there is that possibility. Again, this is just a suggestion from Kane Corns. There's no genuine talk out of either club that is suggesting this is an opportunity or possibility yet. But this idea of maybe taking on a first from Melbourne as well to then take the full extent of Clayton Oliver from the player to the finances all off the books. Maybe you do get a softener come back the other way. And then that is part of that transaction as well. It's a really interesting deal that we're in right now. And as I discuss all this, I feel like I need to search the Jack Bowes trade and just work out what it is that we actually gave up to get him. Jack Bowes is officially a Geelong player with the 2022 Premier, locking away the Gold Coast midfielder along with draft pick 7. Gold Coast receive a future third round selection in return. So obviously it was a heavily favourable deal for Geelong. So it doesn't need to be equal. Both clubs just need to agree to it. So maybe this does unlock some stuff for Geelong when it comes to, especially if this idea that Kane has floated out there, and again, it is just an idea from Kane Corns. If that were a possibility, if that got some traction, if Melbourne was genuinely of the mind, like, we need to get this guy off our books, he doesn't want to be here, he's been problematic for us, everyone needs a clean break here, then maybe that is a way to get the deal done. That we offer up something in return. It's maybe not as, well, it's definitely not equal to a first round pick and a Clayton Oliver, but some sort of pick and a Clayton Oliver. Maybe it's a second round pick and Clayton Oliver to take him over, but then we can use those picks along with what we already have to then transact for Bailey Smith. So for Geelong, that's really great. You get what you want. The Bulldogs will get what they want in terms of suitable compensation in their eyes for a brilliant player. But let's not lose sight of the fact that he could walk through to the draft if he wanted to. And then who knows what happens at that particular point. Then you've got Melbourne that's probably satisfied as well because they've freed up close enough to $6 million. They've gotten a problematic player off their books. They've gotten something back from Geelong. Not equal to what he's worth, but they've got something back from Geelong, possibly something that's in that top 30, which as a result is pretty good because this is meant to be a pretty solid draft. Pretty amazing draft in that pick, top 30 or so thereabouts, apparently. Maybe that's a way that we can get the deal done. And my big hope is that we don't have to give up a Sam de Koning amongst any of this. Or another young gun player as well, for that matter. This could be a way to have the best of both worlds, and yet every other single party in this being satisfied. So Kane Corns, I'm jumping on your idea. I like it. I hope that Geelong and Melbourne like it, because if they can make that work, if there's some sort of agreement in that space, then that potentially unlocks a deal with the Bulldogs for Bailey Smith. And then look out for the Cats in 2025. You add Clayton Oliver, you add Bailey Smith to a midfield that's got Tanner Bruin, Max Holmes, Patrick Dangerfield, Tom Atkins, Cam Guthrie's back. There's going to be so much, and I'm missing people, of course. There is so much. Jack Bowes, I've mentioned him already through this article, through this video. So many high-quality players rolling through that midfield. It's no longer a concern for us. So I like that idea, Kane. I'm gonna build my excitement around that idea. And I'm into the idea of Clayton Oliver coming to the Cats. I know he carries some baggage, but we've seen players come to the club with their problems in the past. Tyson Stengel fits that bill. We've seen Jack Stephen come in with problems. We've seen Mitch Clark come in. There's been a range of different players that have come to this club with baggage over the years, and Geelong has been there to support them, guide them, and help them. And not every single one of those individuals has gone on to have this amazing end of their career. Jack Stephen, for example, and Mitch Clark. It didn't really work for them in terms of on-field stuff, but the club was there for them and helped support them and helped build them back up. And if it actually worked in terms of the football, it would have been a huge deal for us as well, because they were very high-quality players. It just didn't work out. But we didn't give up the world for them in a lot of these cases. This may be another one of those scenarios where we don't have to give up the world. But the result is that we get Clayton Oliver and Bailey Smith joining the Cats and become a 2025 serious contender. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's a really fascinating scenario to kind of wade through at the moment, and I'm keen to hear your thoughts. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are chasing 1,500 subscribers before the end of the trade period, and we're about 30 or so away from that. I would love for you to be a part of our community. Join us in this conversation about all things the Geelong Football Club and the broader AFL. It'll be amazing to have you. You can find us on Patreon as well, where you can get exclusive access to content, early access content, and extended content, all on the channel for just $5 for the entire month. Go check that out. Social media, The Hoops Crew, Paul James Games for myself. And until next time, remain Geelong strong. Clayton, I hope to see you as a Cat. Bailey Smith, you too. I'll see you later.